Hello, beautiful friends. We are getting to that beautiful time of year when we enter into Scorpio season. I love this time of year. I have a special love for Scorpio energy. I have a big history with it. I also have some placements in my own chart, so I work with this energy a lot. It's one of the ways that I've actually found the most depth in my life, the most meaning in my life, and even the most solace and the most sense of comfort. Interestingly enough, in my life, this is the place that when I have gone to this energetic and this symbolism and this archetype and worked with it, I've actually found myself feeling safer and more whole in the world. And I'm excited to explore it here today because I do feel like Scorpio has so many layers. We have our stereotypes and the ways that we would maybe think about Scorpio right up front. And then we have all the deeper symbolic layers, energetic layers that make this an important sign to get used to and familiarize yourself with, and also one that can feel really, really empowering and fulfilling when we get a closer relationship to it. And I have a sneaking suspicion many of you also love Scorpio energy and are also intrigued and curious by it, and may have also found your own forms of medicine and connection through this energetic. So I'm really excited to walk us through this Scorpio season, get us a feel for what these coming weeks are going to be all about, talk about transits, pull a few cards, and also just give us an overarching feel for the energetics of Scorpio. So let's get right into it today because this is a big topic and there's a lot to cover. So of course, Scorpio, it's the fixed water sign. It is the 8th sign. It represents some of the big themes that Scorpio represents is death and transformation, the underworld, rebirth as well. Taboo topics in many cultures, which are sex, death, taxes, other people's money, inheritance, things that we're not allowed to talk about at the dinner table, the mind and psychology, reaching underneath the surface of things, seeking deeper truth in life, and also the subconscious. So it's got a lot to it. I think these topics, we could spend an hour talking about just the concept of transformation or the way that we connect with our subconscious mind. I mean, it goes really, really, really deep, right? But of course, Scorpio as like a sign, when we have our memes and our jokes about signs, which every sign gets teased. So we're all in this together, right? But stereotypes for Scorpios, people who have strong energy in Scorpio, is that they're jealous, vengeful, spiteful, aggressive, sexual, obsessed with horror movies, will stab you. If you betray them. I'm just joking. And generally just are intense, right? Like that is the way that Scorpio is talked about in the meme world. And once again, we all love a good joke. I'm not here to say we should never make silly memes about the signs because it's fun. But I will say that this doesn't really connect with what we're doing when we want to work deeply with Scorpio energy. And quite honestly, I have had quite a few Scorps in my life. I love them so much, and they are deeply loyal, loving people. And they've been the people who would be there for me if anything were to happen. And that loyalty and that steadfastness is really, really beautiful. So I just want to say that on a personal note. But I think on the archetypal level, on the energetic level, if we just want to look at this more in the context of how we as beings in the world connect with this energy. For me, Scorpio is really about healing. And when I say healing, I mean the coming home to ourselves, the no longer having to divide ourselves into pieces. Because I think Scorpio is also about a deeper truth, a deeper honesty within ourselves, where we're no longer pretending that we actually feel a certain way. We face into all the different parts of ourselves, because Scorpio is also about facing into the shadow self, into the self that we aren't allowed to bring to the dinner table. We aren't allowed to bring into culture and society, that we're supposed to kind of cut off and leave behind. So for me, Scorpio is the doorway through which we are able to connect with that self that has so much value and beauty and art to it, and that is longing to be seen and heard and to be an integrated part of our lives. I also think because Scorpio is so deeply tied to this idea of transformation, death, and rebirth, and it's such an innate part of being a human being. We come into these bodies and we all leave these bodies. And it's just this, and we're surrounded by nature that's doing that as well. We're all doing that together. And the more we make friends with this kind of energetic, the more life feels comforting and warm and loving, as well as our leaving of this world feels loving and comforting and true and honest and centered. And one thing that's really interesting for me, when we're talking about the stereotypes of Scorpio energy and how it's like Scorpios will just say it like it is and they'll say really harsh truths and everybody will be like, oh my gosh. For me though, when I think about the truth and honesty, really true things have this way of kind of feeling peaceful, because we're no longer holding up the charade of who we think we need to be. And so even though Scorpio gets teased for being really intense and forward and like saying it like it is, I think that Scorpio energy is more about embracing the bittersweetness of life and the unknown and the deeper tones that are inherently woven into life, and that actually making it a richer experience, a more meaningful experience that actually holds us safe much more consistently than when we feel like we are only worthy of that when we are being our best self at the dinner table, right? And that's what I love about it. I think also because Scorpio is associated with the taboo and the subconscious, it's ruled by the planet Pluto, Lord of the underworld. This is an energetic that encourages us to question where we are holding ourselves in forms and shapes that aren't really true to us, right? And so it also is an energetic and a sign that really questions culture at the deeper level. So that's why I love this energy so much, and it makes me feel so safe and seen and loved. And I think that's what I would wish for all of us as we move through Scorpio season every year, is to amplify that sense of being loved and seen in the bittersweetness, the unknownness of it, and the transformational quality of existing in the world. This particular Scorpio season's themes, because every year, we're going to have a slightly different flavor. And right now, the south node of the moon is in Scorpio. So we're working a lot with how we release. And also the way that working with Scorpio energy, it's about not having to put ourselves through a horrific situation every single time we want to change, learning how to do change in a more sustainable fashion that feels really, really good to us. But some of the themes that are coming up for this particular Scorpio season, we're going to be entering the hidden world, the underworld, and crossing thresholds. So in crossing thresholds, we're learning to see ourselves more clearly, learning to heal old wounds, learning to let go of old ways, and learning to let go of old cords. So in general, this is a beautiful season to just let yourself walk through those doorways and be really gentle with yourself in the process of doing that. This Scorpio season is going to be an eclipse season as well. So there's a lot about release and letting go and softening our grip and our hold and allowing ourselves to be a little bit more in a flow state where we allow our shape to morph, which also means, take care of yourself. You don't have to be open and porous to all energetics all around the world. Shedding old skins, of course, is going to be a big theme this Scorpio season. Welcoming the peace of being honest with ourselves. This is a really wonderful season to just take time out in each day and really let yourself hear the signs and signals that your body and your mind and your whole spirit are giving you. So often we will undercut feelings that we're having. We'll sense that we maybe have an intuitive sense that we just should not do that extra activity. And then we go and do it anyway, and we feel run over and we feel worn down, or what we're eating, or what we're really wanting to put our energy and our time into. Just noticing all the little signs and signals is really important this season. That can really help us calibrate more truly to our lives. Re-examining our relationship to change is another theme. I think just change itself, the concept of it. How do we feel about it? Do we have an inner child that is terrified of it and like gets a lump in our throat every time we think about change? Do we feel like we're friends with it and we're curious about it? This is a really great time to just build more of a friendship with change. Find a lexicon and a vocabulary that you can have together with the concept of change that feels loving to you. And I think really importantly, the Scorpio season is reconsidering what is motivating and meaningful in your daily life, right? Because we're going to have Mars retrograde during this Scorpio season, and so much of what we do to show up at the dinner table of life, right? To not talk about the taboo things, to not show our shadow selves, to divide ourselves into the performer outside and the subconscious and the depths and the parts of ourselves we can't hide. It means that we have to motivate ourselves in sometimes ways that don't feel very good to keep up the appearance of being able to sit at the dinner table of life, right? And so this is a really great time to also think about how we've cracked the whip on ourselves, forced motivation through, forced our way through passages of life, and to just think about those topics. And finally, I think Scorpio season this year is going to offer us greater perspective about the larger process, about what's really important, and about what we want to prioritize. So in general, this Scorpio season, because it is a eclipse season, because we're working with some big energetics with Mars retrograde, this is just a time of really big reassessment and shifting our perspective, our goals, our ideas, and coming home to ourselves more deeply and more honestly. So let's get into some of the transits that I think will be helpful to know about in the coming weeks. So right away, this Scorpio season, the Sun and Venus enter Scorpio together. And Venus, when she meets the Sun, she has a long cycle. I think it's 500, how many days? Somebody's going to be able to tell me. 500 something days. I'm really bad at remembering specific numbers. Her cycle goes. And when she meets up with the Sun, it's symbolic of Venus visiting the underworld, especially here in Scorpio. And when Venus goes into the underworld, this signals a time of recalibration, surrender, transmutation, and greater self-understanding. So much about what we're going to be doing here over the several weeks coming up is going to be about greater self-understanding from the inside out, from the hidden world out, from our shadows out, rather than the other way around. And I think it really starts off with Venus joining the Sun in the sign of the underworld, doing this work. Now that builds straight into October 25th, the new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio. So Sun, Moon, and Venus are all together in the sign of Scorpio. And this solar eclipse heralds a beautiful time to let go of old tethers, forgive ourselves, right? And be clear on how we want to treat ourselves moving forward. A really wonderful time to just clear the board and get really intentional about how we want to treat ourselves as we move forward in life. On October 27th, Jupiter retrograde re-enters Pisces. This is a final visitation of Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter will be leaving Pisces in a couple of months and heading back into Aries. But this little final visitation of Jupiter in Pisces, where Jupiter loves to be, by the way, Jupiter loves being in Pisces, reminds us to take care of our hidden selves, the hidden world. The parts of ourselves also can't come to the dinner table. Pisces has a lot to do with the parts of ourselves that can't come into the visual spectacle world, but need to be experienced at a deep level. So there's an amplification there of watery energy with Jupiter's return to Pisces for a moment. October 30th, Mars starts retrograde, stations retrograde in Gemini, and that retrograde will go until January 12th. And this is a redirection of our energy in the way that we tell our stories, in the way that we talk to ourselves, in the way that we motivate ourselves with our inner dialogues. This is going to be a theme we'll be working with for all of these months ahead, for the next just over 2 months as Mars works backwards through Gemini. And then, of course, the themes will continue as Mars moves forward in Gemini as well. But it is about the retelling of our stories and our value, and we will be talking about that. And I have a Mars retrograde video if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that sign and that transit. November 8th, we have the second eclipse in our eclipse season. We have a full moon total lunar eclipse in Taurus, and that is conjunct Uranus. What has been changing in your life for the past 4 years? Because Uranus joined Taurus in 2018. This lunar eclipse for me is kind of a really great point to think about your transformation and your change and how you've practically grown in the last 4 years, to give it a real acknowledgement as we move through that lunar eclipse, and to understand your own growth. And once again, like I mentioned in general with Scorpio energy, this is about building a new relationship to change, making friends with change, building your own unique relationship to it so that you can speak with change and play with change in a way that many of us don't get taught as children. I know growing up in my household, change was like almost a bad word. Generational stuff that got handed down that had to do with trying to maintain and hold on as hard as possible to the sameness as much as possible. And so I had to build my own relationship to change and make it my friend. And I think that this eclipse season is really going to be a lot about that. As we get into the last days of Scorpio season, we're going to start to have a big rush of energy into the neighboring sign of Sagittarius, which is a totally different energetic. Venus is going to enter Sagittarius on November 15th. Mercury is going to enter Sagittarius on November 17th, which is my grandma's birthday. And November 22nd, the sun will then move off into Sagittarius. And as this energy starts to flow into Sag, Sagittarius it's such an interesting mix for me, moving between Scorpio and Sagittarian energy. I think they work really well together. They're both so brilliant. It's really about digging into ideas and talking about it. Scorpio likes to do it from behind the scenes and like the really deep mechanics of it all, in the depth of exploration from behind the scenes and the shadow and all of that. And Sagittarius likes to bring that all together and give that big perspective view of it and look at it from this very optimistic, expanded space. So we can really bring that energy, and we'll start to see that we're playing with that a little bit more as we come to the last days of Scorpio season. Let's pull some cards for this. Like I said, I don't know. I feel really good about this Scorpio season. Famous last words, right? Sometimes when I feel really good about a season, and I think probably some of you have also had this experience, I'll be like, oh, this is going to be so beautiful and magic. And it is in a way, except that I often will get like a new homework assignment that's actually challenging for me, like on a spiritual level. I'll realize, oh, I'm actually having to learn something pretty deep. I'll realize, yeah, this is really cool, but also, man, I can't keep up. So I'm going to pull 4 cards, 1 card for approximately each week of the season. Of course, it's a little longer than 4 weeks, but Ace of Wands, beautiful. Start the season off with bright new beginnings. King of Pentacles. But yeah, I think, for me though, like I said, I just feel this safety in this energy now that I don't think I always had that relationship to Scorpio. I don't think I always had that relationship to this time of year, the devil. It's something that I built in my life, but as I built it, I realized it's exactly what I needed. And 5 of Pentacles. This is really interesting. This is a really interesting lineup of cards. Because it goes to deep places. Once again, if we're going to talk about our subconscious mind and the way that we tell our stories, there are themes as we get to the end of these cards that are really speaking to that. We start right off with the Ace of Wands. This reminds me of the new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio and that entrance of the sun and Venus together moving into Scorpio. This eclipse season has a lot to do with new beginnings. New openings, new doorways, new chapters. And I think this is one important part about this season. As much as Scorpio is associated with death, with the shedding, with the letting go, with the willingness to release from what is known, you know, in the known world, and cross the threshold, as it's known in Hero's Journey and Heroine's Journey. You cross a threshold into the hidden world. As much as it's about that, it's also about renewal. It's also about transmutation, is just as much about what we're becoming. So it's a reminder here, I think, right away to be paying attention to the signs and signals that are leading you forward. It's not just about mulling over the past. There is like a visionary energetic to this entire season. And if we're paying attention, we'll notice that there are very clear signs and signals trying to get our attention the whole time. Now, along with that, we have King of Pentacles, which is an interesting energetic. King of Pentacles is associated to Taurus, and we are working with Taurus's energy as we go through the lunar eclipse in Taurus. So it makes me think about that quite a bit. But King of Pentacles is about the long game and about grounding ourselves in the longer process. We're working with fixed side energy when we're working with Scorpio, which means this is about the things that we want to sustain over a long period of time, the things we want to nourish and watch grow. And that is where we really need to putting our focus. Like Ace of Wands is very playful, fresh energy, new ideas. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. And I love that. But it's paired here with the King of Pentacles, which is about what we actually want to sustain then. So there's also a parsing out of what it is we want to really build with the signs and signals that we're getting at this time. And it's also a reminder, I think, King of Pentacles on the most practical level, find ways to ground your body. Just take care of your body, take care of your physical wellness, rest when you can, slow down when you can. It's very, very important. Now, the second half of this season, we're pulling up on two cards that I think are so important to get curious about. And I am not surprised that this kind of energy comes out in a Scorpio conversation because, once again, Scorpio is about psychology, the depths of the mind, the subconscious, the stories we tell ourselves, the places we hold ourselves prisoner. And the Devil and the Five of Pentacles are very important symbols of those places. And what I see here is it's very important we spend time with the parts of ourselves that feel unworthy of change, that feel cast out, feel shame about how we want to change, and feel as though we are unlovable. Scorpio's gift is that it allows us the space to be with those parts of ourselves and offer them compassion. It's going to make me tear up. So it's so important. It's so, so important. The Devil and the Five of Pentacles, we never want to see those cards in readings because we're so afraid that it's going to be about what we're doing in the world and how it's affecting us in the world. But for me, these cards are about if we've taken the time to take care of the parts of ourselves that are afraid of change and are afraid of growth and feel those shames and vulnerabilities. So it's a reminder here at this time that it is a visionary time. It's time to dream. It's a time to listen to those signs and signals, try some different things out, get really creative and artistic, and look at interesting art and listen to interesting music and follow the clues and signs and symbols that are leading us to ourselves. It's just as important that we take moments to pause and notice the stories that are telling us that we are unworthy, that we are doing something the wrong way, and to notice our self-talk. That's also a theme that comes up with Mars retrograde during this time, and we'll see that time and again as a theme into the new year. So yeah, I just love seeing those cards there because for me, when we take the time to be with these aspects of ourselves, that's when we actually free up the energy to be ourselves. It's not in avoiding those. It's in seeing them and feeling them and moving through them and then giving ourselves the openness to move forward. So I'm really excited to see what this Scorpio season brings about. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be creative. I think this is just a great time to, like I said, read really interesting books, listen to beautiful music, suffuse your life with the depth and bittersweetness of this existence. Make it an art form all its own. And so much can come of this time of year in doing that. I'm going to be walking us through all of this over on Patreon. That's really where I can dive deep on each of these transits. We have a discussion every single week around what's going on. I activate both of the eclipses over there. We just have a lot of fun. I have an upper tier where we have Zoom calls. We hang out. I get to know you. You get to know me. It's a really, really wonderful space to hang out. So I'd love to see you there. You can also find me on my Instagram, of course, and my website. And I would love it if you stuck around here. We have so much to explore as we move through Scorpio season in the coming weeks. So I hope to see you around here. Take good care of yourselves, dive deep, make friends with all the shadows and depths inside of yourself, and I'll see you very soon.